Ford doesn't want to sell you a Maverick. Ford doesn't want you to buy a Maverick. Ford doesn't make as much money on the Mavericks, but you know who does want the Mavericks? The dealers. All right, Ray, Ford just released their earnings and they were not great. So we're seeing that they pulled back some of their guidance. I know they went from on their Ford Blue division, which is their retail division, going from thinking they were going to do like 6 billion, and they pulled that number back to somewhere around 5 billion. Investors are seeing the writing on the wall. At least they should have been seeing it for a long time. But for whatever reason, this earnings report really shook them loose, and they had this massive drop in their stock. So why are investors spooked right now from Ford?
Well, I mean, I suppose anytime you lower your guidance for the year, where I don't know, for most of the year you've been saying you expect to make $12 billion, and now suddenly after your third quarter report you go, well, it's really going to be closer to 10 billion. You lose 2 billion like that in what you expect to be able to earn in the first 9 months. Well, that's normally not a good sign. And I mean, we knew that they were going to lose money on their EV division. They've expected to lose money on their EV division. I believe their loss was 7.6% better than the same quarter last year. But when your losses are in the billions of dollars, 7.6% it's still in the billions. You're not done being in the billions. Their Blue division, which is the ICE division, sales were down, profits were down. The only division that showed any real strength at all was their commercial division, Ford Pro.
It was up, I think 13% is what the number
something like that. And so if you're looking at it in totality, and you factor in that there's three basic divisions, and your EV division's bleeding money, your ICE division isn't doing what you had expected it to do, and you're counting on your commercial division to carry you through the day, I think that signals bad things to investors out there. I know I would be concerned.
Yeah, so if I remember correctly, just their EV division lost $1.2 billion over the quarter. And I think it was over 32,000 cars. I'm not positive over that number, but I know that I did the math yesterday. We were shooting a video at a Ford dealership over Ford earnings, so I'm close on those numbers, I think. But I was able to figure out that on each EV that they sold in the quarter, they lost $37,500. That's what they lost on each EV sold. And while we were at this dealership, there were two full rows of Mach-E's. There were Ford Lightnings scattered everywhere across this dealership. I mean, they didn't have any discounts on them or anything like that. It almost seems like they have a problem, and it's in their EV space right now. And it's something where, okay, consumers are not going to Ford for EVs. And that's exactly what we're seeing right here. And if Ford wanted to make this a thing, they're realizing now that it's not a thing, because they have recently halted production on their Ford Lightnings. And it's a disaster at Ford right now.
Actually, Ford Lightning production comes to a close in the last shift on November 15th and reopens January 6th. So it seems to me they're taking about 6 to 7 weeks off. They already know they have too many Lightnings in inventory, that they can gladly go 6 to 7 weeks without producing more, and knowing full well that they'll still have way too many Lightnings in inventory when they start cranking up production again in January. We know that Lightnings are such a concern for Ford that they have begged their dealers to take more of them, and will pay them up to $1,500 per Lightning that they take, up to a total of 15, or a total of $22,500 if they take vehicles from the regional distribution centers. because, well, hell, they'd rather have them sitting on dealer lots than at their regional distribution centers. So, yes, Ford has a problem. They have an EV problem. They bet strongly on EVs. They made a big deal about it. That, if you wanted to sell EVs as a Ford dealer, you had to sign up for the program and get certified, and either invest $500,000 or a little over $1 million in infrastructure and charging stations and things like that. And today, they'll look at you and they'll go, "Hey, we don't care if you invested a dime. Will you take one?" And that's where they're at.
So at this Ford dealership that we went to yesterday, it was funny. Both me and I mean my editor that goes with me. He does a lot of the B-roll, a lot of filming while we're there. But we passed by Broncos after
Mhm.
Broncos after Broncos, and it wasn't the Broncos Sports. Like they've had a lot of those. You could always find Bronco Sports.
Yes.
It was the bigger ones. It was Bronco Raptors. It was the Outer Banks packages. It was the Big Ben packages. And if you remember 12 months ago, I would record this all the time where you could barely find one of those Broncos on a dealer lot. And if you did find one, there was a $10,000 market adjustment
Yep.
on it. And I recorded this all the time. And now at this one Ford dealership, there were at least 50 of these Broncos sitting on this dealership lot. It was so bad that they had Broncos that were facing both out this way going down the line, but in front of the Broncos where you were supposed to be able to drive through the lot, they had them also face this way too. They were out of parking spots. There were F-150s sitting in the parking spots where where you park for service. So there were no spots for people to come in to drop their car off. For the service center, there were brand new Broncos and F-150s and Lightnings and Escapes and Explorers sitting in those spots. They were out. They had no room to park any of these things.
Now, I'm guessing that you live in an area where, correct me if I'm wrong, but pickups are fairly popular.
Yeah.
Why can't Ford sell them right now?
It's still the F-150 is still the number one selling truck in the US. It's the number one selling vehicle in the US.
Yes.
And I don't know that it's necessarily, I mean, they're having a hard time selling them, at least the dealerships are. I think it's more of a problem of this accordion effect that's happened. Okay, they anticipated that all these sales were going to come through and they were going to continue to go through. So Ford just kept pumping these dealers full. And now we're at the brim, and it's going to be an element of rates. Yeah, as you know, the Fed has lowered the funds rate, but the 10-year note has gone up. So that means your interest rate on your car payment has actually gone up if you wanted to get a new car payment right now. And then it's just the factor of, okay, the cheapest truck that you can find, the cheapest F-150 I saw yesterday was over $60,000. I mean, people are not going to be able to do that if they're holding on to money because they're worried about things that are coming. They're not just going to go splurge on a $60,000 truck. And this is what I'm seeing here in at my used car dealership when I go to these used car dealer auctions, is that the higher end, the nicer trucks that are going through, they're bringing crazy money because they can bring a premium because people are choosing to buy trucks like that. Yeah, they're overpriced, but they're still way cheaper than it is to buy a brand new one. And this is something that's just happening in the car market and is going to continue to happen unless MSRPs get lowered.
So if I hear you correctly, and I think what I heard you say is, even though the Ford F-150 is the number one selling vehicle in America, it's not selling as well as it could be because it's not affordable anymore.
It's just too freaking expensive.
Okay, that's a nice way to put it. So what it gets back to is something that I've been talking about for 4 years now, which is we have an affordability crisis. And I know Ford will say, well, why do you think we produced the Maverick? We're trying to produce a lower price point pickup truck. It's not a full-size pickup truck, but it's a pickup truck. It just seems to me, and I know we'll probably touch on this later, But it just seems to me that all the manufacturers out there who were betting on a full battery electric vehicle future and bet heavily on that decided that the only way they could get there was to underwrite it with the profits that they could make by producing high priced, high profit margin pickups and SUVs, which they then saddled their dealers with. And and the public has decided that, yeah, we'll buy some of them, but not all of them, because there's not enough of us out there who can afford them. And and so I think that exacerbated the bet that they need to sell these type of vehicles to underwrite the movement to EVs, and yet there's a slowdown on the sale of those high profit margin vehicles. So how are they ever going to finance that EV future?
All right, so all of you watching it here, I know most of you are not subscribed, so I need you to hit that subscribe button. Whatever we need to do to get you to hit that subscribe button, Ray will do it. So just hit it for us and let us know what he needs to do down in the comments to get you to subscribe. So it's funny that you bring up the Maverick, because this is a point that I talked about yesterday while I was on that dealership, and there were probably this was a Ford and a Lincoln dealership that were combined.
Okay.
I would guess that there were 2,000 to 25. This is a massive volume dealership.
Okay.
2,000 to 2,500 vehicles at that location. They had F-150s, Lightnings, Lincolns. They had fleet vehicles also there. That's why there were so many vehicles. I saw one Maverick on that whole lot.
1 out of 2,000?
And it wasn't for sale. It was in the customer parking lot.
Uh-huh. Oh, okay. So
Yeah.
None out of 2,000.
So 0 out of 2,000, 2,500 vehicles. And I talked about this quite a bit. And Ford doesn't want to sell you a Maverick. Ford doesn't want you to buy a Maverick. Ford doesn't make as much money on the Mavericks. But you know who does want the Mavericks? The dealers, because the dealers can sell the Mavericks. So whether you're talking about an F-150 or a Maverick, yeah, the dealer's going to make a little bit more money on the F-150s, but where dealers make most of their money are going to be on products that they're able to sell you that don't necessarily pertain to the vehicle. They're going to sell you F&I products, the dock fee. That's where we're going to make a lot of money. They're going to make money in service. So they would actually rather do volume than they would margin in a lot of cases, in my opinion. I've never run a new car dealership. Ray, you can talk about this a little bit more, but there's so much more margin in the other products that they're able to sell you. So the more products they're able to sell consumers, meaning more volume that they're able to do, I would assume the more money that they're able to make. So from the salespeople that I've talked to at Ford, they would 100 times want more Mavericks sitting on their lot than these F-150s, because the Mavericks, they can move right now, but the F-150s are just sitting. And it's just a testament to what I saw yesterday, where we have, I mean, there had to be 500, 750 F-150s at this dealership lot, and no Ford Mavericks.
Here's how you need to look at it. If the average F&I back-end profit per vehicle sold today is probably somewhere around $2,000. Okay? Would you like to collect that $2,000 on selling 100 cars? And what's that, $200,000 that you make? Or would you rather collect that $2,000 on selling 150 cars? And that's $300,000. So yeah, they want to do it in volume. Okay, so the dealers would prefer to have more Mavericks to sell than F-150s. They're going to make the same type of back end money on a Maverick as they would on that F-150. Well, the Maverick's much easier to sell. You can sell many more of those. So yeah, absolutely, the dealers, the dealers are starting to recognize the need to have more affordable vehicles for their customers to choose from so that they can increase their sales volume. You mentioned the dock fee. I don't know what the dock fee is in North Carolina. In
The average dock fee in North Carolina is $799. I did look that
Okay,
up.
$800.
Yep.
Okay. What's the expense associated with that $800? Well, I'll help you with that. Zero. Okay. So if you sell 100 cars, that's $80,000 in dock fees. If you sell 150 cars, that's what, $120,000 in dock. That has no cost. Okay, that's just pure profit. Dealers want to do volume. Dealers need the manufacturers to recognize the fact that yes, we understand you need ICE vehicle sales to underwrite that movement into EVs, but we as dealers need to have volume vehicles for people to buy so that we can pick up our dock fees. We can pick up our $2,000 per vehicle sold on the back end in finance. There is huge money to be made in volume, and we've been talking about affordability forever and ever, but this is just a prime example as to why they need it, why dealers are starting to clamor for their manufacturers to produce lower priced vehicles so that they can draw more people in, so that they have more opportunities to pick up the dock fee and the average back end gross profit.
So I want to go back to these Broncos because it blew me away. I've never seen this many of these big body Broncos in one space at one time. So what happened in this scenario? I don't know how Ford's allocation system works. I know with Nissan, my buddy who runs the store, he's able to order vehicles. I don't know if Ford has that same kind of process or if they're just, okay, you got to just take all these. What is the mindset like? Okay, they were selling so many of them, so they just ordered all of them, and then the sales just stopped. What happens now with these Broncos? If it was your store, whenever you were running things back then, if you had a vehicle that was really hot, do you try to get as many of them as possible? Was there ever a situation where okay, everything was running hot on this one particular vehicle, and then all of a sudden it just stopped?
Yeah. Yeah, yeah, it happens. You never know when that spigot is going to be turned off or on. Okay, when it's on, it's great. I'll take as many of those as you can send me. When suddenly the customers have turned that spigot off, I don't want to ever see another one. Okay, but at that point, it's too late. Okay, for most dealers it's too late, and because they think it's going to continue, but it doesn't continue. What happens is they get overloaded. So if I was working at a Ford dealership and all of a sudden I started seeing my Broncos stacking up, well, I would be making adjustments on the pricing of those so that my customers would know when they came in the door, if you were looking for a Bronco Sport, here's what we're doing. And I mean, I will tell you, when I was at the Acura store in North Scottsdale, I had a whiteboard at the receptionist desk, and it just said November deals, whatever month it was, and I would list each model, TL, invoice less, invoice plus $200 less factory incentive. And I would put what the factory incentive was. And the people knew on that whiteboard what they were going to end up having to pay. They were going to pay us a $200 profit, and they were going to get the factory incentive, and I was going to make the hold back. And life was simple because I realized I had a problem. I had more cars than I had customers. So you have to come up with a way to attract the customer to go, okay, yeah, I don't have to haggle, I don't have to hassle. Here's my, yeah, okay, I'll do that. And that's what these Ford dealers need to be doing with the Broncos that are building up. As a manager, you look at it and you go, okay, it's getting out of hand. We gotta run a sale, whether it's a silent sale and only people that come in and see it, or you actually advertise the damn thing. But whatever you do, you have to make people aware of it, and you better figure out how to make as many people aware of it as you possibly can.
And that $200 was just to pay the salesperson, I would assume. So
Well, yeah, because the Mini at that time was $150. Yeah,
yeah.
but it gave my finance department an opportunity to pick up some money. It created a potential service customer down the road. Let's face it, not everybody that buys a new car at a dealership is going to service the vehicle to the dealership or at that dealership, unless, of course, it's warranty work. They're going to take it there, but otherwise, they might not. But if you do it right, you've at least created an opportunity for service, and then it becomes part of your responsibility and the service department's responsibility to encourage people, give them reasons to utilize your service department. But if you didn't sell them a car in the first place, you've got no reason to contact those folks. So, yeah, you have to look at what the potential outcome could be, not just what the outcome is on the front end of that deal. There's a back end outcome. There's a future parts and service outcome. There's many things where you can make money off of that customer moving forward. Hit that like button, hit the subscribe button, tell every living person you know that they need to subscribe to Car Sense with Brandon and Ray.